bridge. This bridge is the only way that, this process, I should say, is the only way we would have had the funds, not just this year, but in any foreseeable year in the future to make those changes. And that's why this bridge applied for what was called an infra grant, and we received $45 million cash money. We've never, ever, ever had $45 million in cash money for this bridge. You've had $45 million in play money, maybe even more, but to make that turn into real money wasn't going to happen. We also had an opportunity to spend about 18 to 20 million to repair the tunnel. Chris worked hard for a number of years to try and get that in the traditional budget process. And we said, listen, if we're going to repair the tunnel in 4 or 5 years, I might have to go out and spend some more money to repair the tunnel. Why not take that money and put toward a new bridge? I can't build it for 20 million. If I add that 45, I'm probably halfway where I need to be. And so now we're at 60 plus million. We then decided, for years we've had the ability to do some innovative bonding with transportation dollars called Garvey bonds. We've never done Garvey bonds. The only reason we're able to use Garvey bonds on this project is because I'm taking money I spend today on the interstate and I'm putting it in a new kind of project, one that has private investment as opposed to just 100% subsidized with the state. It's the only project that's going to get money out of the Garvey bonds that's not on an interstate, because I'm taking that money from what is isolated for the interstate. And then we also talked to RPC, and we said, you're interested in this because you manage a traffic model. You manage this region. And are you willing to give me some money to help? They don't have a lot of money. Their money comes from me. Believe it or not, all of the money that RPC gets in urban systems is actually money that comes from the DOTD. People don't realize that. So we said, would you give me $1 million a year for 12 years? That's another $12 million. So here we sit with about $85 million of a $125 million project. Where do I go for the rest? I can't go and get the rest of it from that play money pot and expect it to deliver on time to actually let a contract, because state law says I can only let a contract if I have 100% of the money to pay for that bridge up front. So I can't just go say, give me some capital outlay, and I'll see what happens in 4 or 5 years, because I won't be able to spend the other money. And by the way, because President Trump supported this project, it was one of 19 projects. It was the only public-private partnership to do what he's asked states around the country to do, was to use private investment to help build public infrastructure. If I don't use this model, I have to give them $45 million back. And that 83 drops significantly down, and the request of that play money goes significantly up. So that's the model that we've put together. And so we've asked the private sector to come up with about $50 million. And we said the way we're going to pay you your $50 million back is with a toll. They could produce something else. I could let them go develop property and make money, but I don't own any property. I could let them sell snowballs in traffic, but we don't have the bridge, so you don't have to wait. I could give away mineral rights that I don't have. So there's really no other way for the private sector to get a return on their investment. I could let them advertise on the bridge, and they might do that. So what we've asked them to do was come up with the delta. But we said, when you come up with that delta, I want you to give me something that's practical and reasonable. I want the lowest possible toll for the shortest amount of time. I don't want a 50-year contract. And I don't want to necessarily say, here's 10 cents, but I want you to give me the lowest realistic toll for you to loan the state $50 million over a period of time and get your money back. Will it come with interest? Absolutely. But that's going to be built in their proposal, and the only way they can get that interest is to do it a certain way and operate it a certain way. In the public-private partnership process, you advertise, you go out. We had 20 plus people submit letters of interest, people from all over the world who have big dollars to invest in P3s. We then identified 6 of them to submit an application. Give me your qualifications. Do you have the money? Do you have the capacity to design it? Have you demonstrated that you've done this before? We narrowed it down to 3. The 3 teams have done this before, have the experience, they've built bridges. And we said, send us a proposal. And we did a press release yesterday that said we had 1 proposal submitted. Now, before you say, wait a minute, that's only 1 proposal, it's not fair, it's not going to work. That's not the case, because this is not a competition between those 3 proposals or potential 3 proposals. It's a competition between that proposal and what we've asked for. And what we've asked for is a bridge. What we've asked for is something with high customer service. What we've asked for is a toll that has the lowest possible toll for the shortest amount of time. We've also told them that you can do some things differently than we do on a normal project. You may have seen the layout of the project that we talked about, that we've gotten environmental clearance. That project is the maximum of its mitigation. So they can't go out and go decide they're going to move it in a different location. But what they can do is say, I can make it a little smaller because I can design it differently. I can construct it differently. Why can they do that? Because that's their incentive to save money to get to a lowest toll. And so we give them that innovation to do more than what we would normally do. They might buy less property than what I have to buy. But more importantly, I'm going to let them manage it and maintain it and operate it for the duration of the agreement. If it's 10 years, 15 years, and then it's going to come back to me. And when it comes back to me, I expect it to be in a certain condition. So what's different about this toll project? Well, contrary to what a lot of legislators want, is they want to make the decision on how much the tolls are. That model does not work. It is not a part of the P3 practice. If I tell the bank, loan me some money to go buy a house on St. Charles Street, but I'm going to tell you how much I can pay you back, that's not going to go very well. I can't tell McDonald's how much to charge for a Big Mac or Chick-fil-A for a chicken sandwich. They're going to put a price on it, and people are going to come buy it if they want it. So where we stand today and how we're going to go through this process in terms of a P3, we are doing the due diligence. If I had the same 3 applications, even though I only have 1, we go through the whole check and balance of everything that they've submitted. All right? Once we do that, we're going to have a presentation with them to understand and ask questions about it. Once we do that, because your state representative asked us to do it and it makes absolute sense, because this is only our first P3. If we don't do it right, we probably will never get a chance to do this again. So we've arranged to have 2 public meetings, one here in Plaquemine and another public meeting in Baton Rouge, where the entity and the state, if they give me something that's acceptable, will come and lay out, here's what they're proposing to do, and this is what we can expect. And here's what we would want to get out of this project. And then after that process, my job is to take what I heard in those meetings, what they've heard in those meetings, and sit down with this company and say, how do we negotiate to get even a better product than what you've rolled out? They might propose something that's 26 years. I might say to them, how do I get this to 20 years? They might give me a rate of X. How do I get that rate to X minus a certain amount? The contract actually says, or what would be the contract, we have a comprehensive agreement because in fairness to that entity, I've given them what the framework of that contract would look like. And in that contract, just like when you buy a house, you're going to pay it for 30 years. You can get out of that house in 10 years if you paid a certain premium, because they're expecting to make interest over the course of that. You're not going to pay the same amount, but you can pay it off earlier if you wanted to. And you're going to need to know what that is, I need to know what that is, and that entity is going to need to know what it is. And so the other thing I will tell you is when people see that there's 1 application, they think you can't make this happen. There are 3 for sure. One is a $2 billion project that's operating today. Another one is a $70 billion project that's operating today. And another one is a $70 million, and another one is $600 million. That started off with 1 proposal, and it made it work. The other thing people will say is, why are you doing this bridge? The fact that we're doing this bridge first means this is the most important bridge available to us that we can do this on. Why are we doing this bridge first? Because it's one that's already built that needs it. I spend too much money trying to keep it together as opposed to spending it to give you something that I don't have to spend as much. Something old and dilapidated and broken costs more with maintenance. The other issue is, I think every project that has toll feasibility ought to be looked at as far as having tolls, because the idea that we can continue to pay for infrastructure like we have in the past, it's a long gone dream. When I became secretary, my backlog, which means the unmet needs, the deferred maintenance, was $13.1 billion, and I've spent about $1 billion plus a year, and guess what? It's gone up to 14. Every year since I've been secretary, it's increased because the amount of money I'm spending isn't enough to at least break even. And so, outside of that issue of not keeping up with the maintenance, here's the reality. If I don't get $64 million from the governor for my budget next year that we're going to go present in 2 weeks, I'm going to leave $100 million I already get in Washington, D.C., because that's the mechanics of it. And so that puts in perspective, I don't know how quickly this bridge would ever get built with the revenue that I have today. This was not our first option. Our first option was a gas tax that everybody would have paid for around the state, LA1, Shreveport, all of that. Didn't get a vote. This bridge would have been paid for without a toll or anything. But the other two bridges in Baton Rouge and in Lake Charles on the interstate, it would have had to have a toll even with a gas tax because they're billion-dollar bridges. So when you put it in perspective, it may not be what you want to hear, but that's our reality in terms of infrastructure. I don't want to have to do a toll. I want to do a toll only if I can give you something for it, because in life, you get what you pay for and you pay for what you get. And I don't think you get quality out of that bridge and that tunnel right now.